Some Orientalists claim that the Islamic way of slaughter is inhumane. They provide the evidence of contractions and convulsions that the animal suffers when being killed. In fact, it's absolutely the opposite. If the Islamic method is performed correctly, it prevents the blood and air from reaching the brain. Thus, the animal becomes completely unconscious and loses all feeling. The convulsions that occur are but reflex actions which rid the carcass of all the blood it contains.
The effect of pronouncing the words, "In the name of God, Allah is greater," over the carcass is not confined to the purity and clarity of the meat. There is also an effect on changing the spiritual climate in the slaughterhouse from a state of misery and unhappiness to a state of pleasure and ease. This is what directors and workers in cattle and fowl slaughterhouses have confirmed.
Regarding slaughter, when performing it, we noticed that the amount of blood increases so much more when mentioning the words Allah is greater. Besides, when we do not pronounce the words, the animals are anxious and become agitated. They are much more comfortable when we pronounce the words.
They pronounce the words, Allah is greater, loudly over each carcass when they slaughter it. It was noticed that when doing this, the animal bleeds more and its meat is much lighter. In contrast, if these words are not said, the animal does not bleed enough and its flesh becomes rotten much more easily and in a much shorter period of time.
I was working in one of the largest slaughterhouses in Syria. When the findings of the research appeared, we soon began to apply them in the place where we work. We were surprised because we had faced a lot of trouble when driving the animals into the slaughter hall. After applying this act, we saw the animals entering the hall easily.
When we went to the slaughterhouse in order to see how the slaughtering acts were performed, we found that the animals which were being driven to be killed were coming submissively as if they were yielding to the fate which Allah had created for them. They were surrendering themselves, and the blood was flowing out of them cleanly and in great amounts.
When pronouncing the name of Allah, the slaughter is performed with godliness, calm, and humanity. All the workers remember that the name of Allah prevails over everything. So, in this submissive atmosphere, the carcass is affected as little as possible in losing its soul. Consequently, the quality of the muscles made ready for eating are completely undamaged, and the amount of the bleeding is so plentiful that the amount of germs is minimal. Therefore, the food for these carcasses relieves a great deal of anxiety from the consumer. In my opinion, the studies performed by the medical team on the effect of pronouncing the name of Allah on a carcass has proved that this meat is completely free of microbes and resulting quality is very high.
It was proved that the negligence of pronouncing the name of Allah over a carcass made its meat a focus of blood filled with microbes. So what is the opinion of doctors and specialists about the presence of this blood and these microbes within the tissue of the meat? What is the extent of their effect on public health?
عندما كنت في الخارج أثناء سنين دراستي رأيت بأم عيني كيف يتماثل.
During the years of my studies abroad, I noticed how the patients really improved when they stopped eating meat. The main reason I gave for this was that this meat was not slaughtered according to Islamic custom. In other words, it had been slaughtered in another fashion. And after revealing the great importance of pronouncing the words Allah is greater over a carcass, in preventing blood from remaining in the animal and the consequent growth of microbes, it has become clear that this is very much the cause. So the meat which people stopped eating appeared to be similar to the meat over which the words Allah is greater had not been said, and in which microbe reproduction had increased to the extent that the amount of toxins and enzymes secreted by germs was considerable. Thus, this meat was the reason for the problems and not the cure for them. The damage caused by Staphylococcus to the body is dangerous. They can cause severe infections when attacking the skin, nose, ear and throat, and the death rate may reach 20%, especially amongst patients who suffer immunodeficiency. They may also cause food poisoning, as some of these toxins secreted by the microbes have a high ability to resist heat and pass through the mucous membrane to the stomach. They can reach the intestines, as well as pass through the stomach and enter the bloodstream, then reach all parts of the body. These toxins, secreted by the Staphylococcus germs, are of a wide variety and have an ability to decompose the blood and cause toxicity in the white cells that defend the body from disease.
The Islamic way of slaughtering allows the animal to move freely and consequently bleed in a complete way. Other ways followed in Europe depend on making the animal lose consciousness before the slaughtering. This allows a great deal of blood to stay in the carcass, and this is a perfect environment for the multiplication of microbes. When this blood decomposes, it produces poisonous compounds that can prosper in a man's body. These compounds could be poisonous if they reach the stage of producing free amino acids, and generally the blood contains such simple nitrogen compounds. These acids may condense and produce further compounds that have a negative effect on a consumer's health.
إن التناول المتكرر للحوم الغير مكبر عليها له أثر تراكمي سلبي.
The recurrent eating of meat over which the words Allah is greater was not pronounced has an accumulative negative effect on a man's health. It appears to affect the epidermis, and indications of its effects are shown in early senility, amongst other results. That is what I noticed in the countries where I was studying.
Moreover, when the blood remains in the meat of the carcass over which the name of Allah wasn't pronounced, it makes it spotted and gives it a bad appearance. Consequently, people will lose business, and such carcasses also decay very quickly whilst being stored. This causes economic damage as well.
Since the blood is the medium for the growth of the microbes, which contains them even when the animal enjoys good health, it may be unable to resist their reproduction after slaughtering, as all antibiosis activity stops. This will surely cause the meat to decay in a short time, and this lack of quality will be reflected in the meat available for human consumption. If we leave the blood at normal temperature, it will decay within 3 or 4 hours. So, what will happen if it exists in an airless environment inside the muscular tissue? This will certainly cause the meat to rot quickly and not fit for human consumption. Consequently, it will be inedible according to all local and international standards.
A man may say, how about those who may eat the blood and carcass through necessity when fearing death?
The Almighty God legitimizes us to eat the meat of carrion, swine, and strangled animals in case of dire necessity, that is, when fearing death because